Brazil is famous for its Amazon rainforest, but it is also home to a vast mangrove forest along its northern coast, covering roughly 4,000 to 4,500 square miles. Journalist Ana Bottallo, supported by the Pulitzer Centre, ventured there where she discovered that, while largely healthy, this precious ecosystem is increasingly threatened by predatory fishing practices. Her reporting highlighted the crucial role that local communities play in protecting these vital mangrove forests for us all. So Ana Bottallo is a biologist with a master's degree in zoology and a PhD in paleontology. Based in São Paulo, Brazil, she has reported on science and health for Folha de São Paulo since 2020, where she also has acted as assistant health editor and bylined the newsletter called Take Care on Health and Wellbeing. She embarked on covering underreported environmental issues, such as threats to the Amazonian mangroves, in a project supported by the Pulitzer Centre. So, of course, you're in Brazil, you're at the centre of the climate crisis because you're there where the Amazon is, and nothing represents our ecological impending doom than the state of the Amazon.
Brazil is one of the most biodiverse countries in the world. And of course, we are touched by the Amazon forest because it is a large part of our territory. But we also have 5 other biomes, and the importance of preservation of species and the environment, it is crucial not only to us who live here, but also to the rest of the world because of all the services those ecosystems play together.
So Anna, you started your career in a different way, if you like, than some people. You came from science. You began your career in science. So can you tell me a little bit about what you studied, what you wanted to be as a child, and what direction that first took you in?
Certainly, Tracy. Thank you for that question. So ever since I was a little child, I loved nature. I wanted to study the living beings and all things related to animals, plants. And so when it came time for me to choose a undergraduate course, I went straight to biological science. But I kind of felt that this was not everything. I wanted to communicate science. I wanted to do something that would touch people that were not familiar with terms such as taxonomic and phylogenetic evolution. At around that same time, I was in my second year of PhD, of doctorate track, and I entered a trainee program at Folha de São Paulo, which is one of the main large news outlets here in Brazil. And I kind of fell in love with science journalism. I've never worked with that, but I felt that it was something that I was good at and that I wanted to know more. Living those 6 weeks within a newsroom, it was an experience that I've never felt before.
So did you feel, as you moved from being a pure scientist into journalism, did you feel you were leaving anything behind? Did you feel worried that perhaps you couldn't be quite true as a scientist if you were also being a journalist?
I've never felt that exactly, but one thing that I felt was that, first of all, when I was at the end of my doctorate program here in Brazil, we were facing huge cuts in science funding. So I was already feeling that it was very difficult to work with science based on grants from the national government because they were cutting short. And I felt that I wasn't getting enough of what I could do with my potential of working, because when we study things such as evolution and origin of species, we are doing what we call hard science, which sometimes is difficult to translate to everyday lives or to how this is going to change people's lives in an instant fashion. But I didn't struggle to write science communication pieces that were more simpler to make, but at the same time, they would get so much outreach and would touch so many people that I felt that this was something I could really put my finger on.
So you're really feeling that impact through journalism that you perhaps didn't see immediately through science?
Exactly. Of course, when we are talking about writing for a newsroom, we sometimes have to finish news pieces by the end of the day. We have to write 3 or 4 notes at the same time. We have to do interviews with lots of experts in the same day, and it can be very overwhelming, and the pressure can be very high, which is totally different from writing for a research journal, for writing a scientific paper.
So tell us a little bit about the story that we're talking about today.
When I started working with the biodiversity laws, I saw that we had a huge gap of fishery statistics in Brazil. So we don't know exactly what is being fished, what type of fish is being exported, what we consume locally. And I started working on some pieces about sharks and rays being fished and sold at the Amazon forest when I stumbled through the Amazon mangrove. So it was not my main focus. I was there primarily for a report on sharks and rays in the Amazon region. But then talking to some locals, they got my attention to seeing how those mangrove areas, they were important for the preservation of some species and had an impact also on the population of those sharks and rays at the same region.
So even beyond Brazil, the mangroves are very, very important. Can you explain to us where they fit in the ecological cycle and why a mangrove in Brazil should be cared about by the rest of us?
Mangroves take a lot of carbon from the atmosphere. It is expected that most of the carbon that's held up underneath mangroves, they could help reduce the global warming by nearly 75% in the areas that they occur. So this is also a very important service that mangroves play for us. Mangroves, they are in the transition environment between riverine and the marine environment. So what the most part of the mangrove are within that transition line, and they are characterized by a transition from the riverine to the marine environment. So these trees, they can support very highly saline water, as opposed to trees that are in the riverine environment that would die with high amounts of salt. And they also have these roots that are adapted to getting air above the water surface. So they get air also when there is poor oxygen in the water. They can do it through those roots that are sometimes above water surface. And they also are what we call the nursery of some species. So there are a lot of species, marine species, that go to the mangrove areas. They reproduce there, they lay their eggs, and then they have all the larval phase in the mangroves, and then the adult would go to the sea, to deep sea, and come back to the mangrove. So this full cycle of life is taking part in the mangrove.
So these mangrove forests are, in effect, they're incredibly important. They are carbon sinks. They're nurseries for all sorts of fish and invertebrate species. And of course, they're incredibly important to the local communities. So I'm sure it's not the local communities that are putting the mangroves at risk. What is the threat?
What we can say that really menaces mangrove ecosystems, and specifically, as I mentioned, in the Amazon region, is predatory fishing that can occur at the shoreline, but also that can occur at open areas in the sea, because this can affect the populations of fishes that need their life cycles to be completed in the mangroves. So this would have a depletion of fisheries that would impact all those ecological balances that we see in the mangrove area. Another driver of menace to mangroves, of course, is the climate change. Now, the climate change can impact mangroves in 2 different ways. It can alter the concentration of oxygen in the water, and since the mangroves are in that transition between river and marine water, it's very important to maintain a concentration of oxygen that can be effective for the marine life that lives there. If you change the the oxygen concentration, this can impact the marine life. And the second one is the tidal changes. So what we see now with the climate change and with the the rise of the sea level is that we are having direct impact in the tidal waves. So some of the communities that would be not flooded in the dry season are already facing an increase of water in the dry season, and when it's the wet season, this can be a total disaster with floods, with loss of forested areas, with loss of entire communities, with communities being impacted with their houses. So these are two of the main menaces that mangroves face today.
And how were you treated by the local community when you went there to report? How did you find people? Did they welcome you?
Oh, they were wonderful. Actually, as I was there 1 year before reporting on sharks and rays, I already got in touch with some of the community leaders. And when I came back with my colleagues, we were already acquainted with some of those community leaders. They were very welcoming. They showed us their homes. They were very eager to talk to us, to tell us how important it is to preserve the mangrove. And also sometimes they were feeling that they were never heard before. So they had their voice and they wanted to speak out. Communities living in those areas are very connected to the environment. They live at the mangrove area. They thrive on the Amazon, on the mangrove area. They go there to fish. They go there to catch some mollusks and some crabs. They go there for cultural purposes. They have songs and stories that are related to the mangroves. So it's not only important in the environmental and ecological part of the ecosystem, but also how it touches all, the communities and its cultural values. They don't do what we call predatory fishing or predatory harvesting of the wood, as I mentioned. They live in harmony, so their impact is low, and their status as protective communities is very important because they understand the importance of maintaining that environment. They said to us that even though they maintained the mangrove, they kept the protected areas. They weren't being given anything from the national government to do that. And in Brazil, we have some laws, some legislations that protect fisheries from when the period when you cannot fish because of the reproductive season of some species. They give people a small amount of money to keep them there living through these months. It's not the same with mangroves. So in mangrove areas, they don't get that aid from the government, and they resent that very much because they said to us, look, we are here, we live here, we protect the mangrove, and nobody does anything for us. We don't have a good school. We don't have a good health system. We are not covered by Social Security. So we need to be a part of that program if they want us to keep being guardians of this important ecosystem.
So the local people were really championing their own mangroves. They were telling you how important they were.
Exactly. I think that one thing I learned from reporting with vulnerable communities is that you have to be sensible to their own requests and not use it to patronize, because sometimes I see that the main media patronizes some of these problems. And it's not what we must do. We must give them a platform, as you mentioned, to speak out. It's their voices. It's their lives. They are impacted. We are not living there. We don't face the same threats. So when we go there, we have to be respectful. We have to think with sensitivity how they are being sometimes harmed or sometimes successful in their requests, and we need to give them that perspective. Hey, we are here. We want you to be heard. We want you to speak out. We want to show the world what you are facing, and not just going there and saying to them, "Oh, look, this is how the scientific community thinks they can solve this problem for you." I think this is what true science journalism should do.
So Anna, you wrote this very powerful report, and after that was published, what was the impact? What happened next?
So after we did the reporting, we talked a lot with a lot of people from those communities, and they mobilized. We had a huge response from the local communities. They were very happy with how the reporting came out. And a couple of months later, we knew that they were reunion with the government for the creation of a protective law for the mangrove ecosystem. We never had a specific law for protecting the mangroves. And one of the impacts of our reporting was showing all people, policymakers, people that weren't familiarized with how mangroves are important, that this ecosystem really needs a protection that is different from any other environment, because they play such unique services in the areas that they occur. This protective legislation now institutes that mangrove areas should be protected as a tropical rainforest, and that means that they cannot be deforested. They are now protected and cannot be fished or collected or hunted in the nature. So these are to sum up some of the impacts that this new legislation has now on the mangrove areas.
That's fantastic. And you must feel very satisfied that your reporting contributed in some way to that coming about.
Yes, I also, we love journalism. We love stories of communities that touch people. I think that this is one of the main objectives as journalists for us. But I think that I did my job done. I did my job when we saw that a Pulitzer organized a contest for young people in Latin America that wanted them to write letters about the importance of protecting the environment. And one of the winning letters was from a Brazilian student that wrote a letter to the Ministry of Environment here in Brazil, addressing the importance of preserving mangroves, following what she saw, what she read on our reporting. So she actually named the reporter in her letter. And the ministry replied to her. So this was something very interesting, because we saw that there was a social activist taking place and going through the higher authority of higher authority environment here in Brazil. So I think this was fulfilling for us.
That's fantastic. That must have been really, really fantastic to see that you're inspiring the next generation as well to care about the mangroves. So what was it actually like to be in that mangrove forest?
So I went with a colleague, Taiguara Ribeiro, who has also reported on quilombolas, which are some communities here in Brazil of Afro-descendant origin, and also our own photographer, Giovanna, also from Folha. And we were amazed about how beautiful this environment is, how amazing it was to just navigate through the course of the river, and also how close we were to the sea. It's a very transformative sensation that I've never felt any other time of my life.
And as someone who's loved nature your whole life, did these trees have a very special place for you?
I've never really given that much importance, because we are told so many times growing up and looking at media and photos of the importance of the Amazon forest, or sometimes the importance of the tropical rainforests. So we've never looked at the mangrove with that kind of amazement. And when we were there, I believe that changed completely. I didn't have a relation, I didn't have a special relation to mangroves before, but now they hold a very important part in my heart.
Now you can retire quite happily. I do think it's incredibly important, though. You know, I think an awful lot of people maybe don't understand when they think about journalism, but actually giving that voice to communities, to people, to individuals who may otherwise not have a platform to speak is just incredibly important. Anna, thank you so much. Thank you for your work. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and hopefully that the work you still will be doing. And all the very much best of luck for the future.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I've never imagined that I would be here reporting on Amazon mangroves. We are facing COP30 in Brazil, and I think that we are putting them right in the center of the discussion. So I've never been happier, and I will try to continue reporting on important subjects as this and trying to give local communities a voice through my platform.